I would like to introduce Michael Bourne. So Mike, he's coming all the way from Canada to be with us. So let's share a screen with Mike. His debut novel, Blightfield Canyon, is due out from Regal House in July of this year. He's published more than a dozen stories in literary magazines, including Tin House, the Southampton Review, December, and The Common. He's a contributing editor to Poets and Writers magazine. He's a staff writer at the literary website The Millions. He also writes for the Globe and the Mail, the National Post, Salon, the New York Times Magazine, the Georgia Straight, and the Economist. Those are just a few of them. And best of all, Mike and I were we're both alumni of the dramatic writing program at Tisch School of the Arts, New York University. So we go way, way, way back. He was a fantastic writer back then, and now he's seasoned. That's what happens when you get up to a certain age, you get seasoned. He grew up in Northern California. He lives in Vancouver, British Columbia. So Mike, welcome. We're so proud of you. Congrats on your upcoming book.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's coming out. It's June 30th. It's actually the date.
June 30th.
Yeah.
That's, I said July, but that's close.
Yes, it was they changed the date. What do you
I hate when publishers do that. Yeah. So I've got a bunch of questions for you that I think will help people on this mastermind not only learn about your book and the process that you went through writing your book, but also a few things that you've learned along the way about publishing, because as a journalist, you've covered publishing and know quite a bit. So you're coming at publishing from a different angle than I am. So you have a lot of interesting insights. So I've already pre-ordered your book. I can't wait to get it and to read it, hold it in my hands. But since I haven't read it, I think the best person to, there it is, you've got a copy. How'd you get one so early? Oh, because you're the author.
They get certain privileges, right?
So tell us a little bit about it.
There it is. There it is. Okay, so Blightfield Canyon. I was trying to think about how I would introduce it. I'm going to have to get good at this, right? It's a little pitch. So it's a novel about love and other addictions, set in Northern California. And the narrator, a guy named Trent Wolfer, who's a serial screw up. He's a poor kid raised in a rich town, and he's blown it in like every single possible way you can. And he narrowly avoids prison and ends up being sent home, bailed out basically, and has to live with his mother in his hometown. And the book begins with him blowing it again. He's back at his old ways, and about to sort of go back down again. And in walks a woman that he dated or was in love with anyway in high school, who's now a single mother of two. And the book is basically just this guy trying not to blow up his life so he doesn't blow up hers. And you know, you got to read to the end to find out what happens.
Yeah, so it sounds like from what I can see of it, it's being categorized as literary fiction, but it also sounds like there are a lot of funny moments in it.
Yeah, no, that is very much a meant to be funny and sort of biting. And it's set in my hometown in Mill Valley, which is eminently, it's Marin County, it's La La Land. It's an easy target.
So you're writing about what you know.
Yeah, write about what you know, and it's a big broad target, and I take aim and have fun.
So what inspired you to write the book?
Well, yeah, interesting question. I think I always wanted to write a story, write a book set in that town. It's so rich, such a rich, and then I'm also really into. I always love stories where the two characters really shouldn't be together. Like you're rooting for them to get together, but in your heart, this is not a good thing. I love those kinds of stories. So that's what it was, right? It was this love story between these two people who are the whole time going, oh man, I hope they get together, but at the same time, I really hope they don't, for everybody else's sake and for theirs. That was the idea. To try to tell that love story in that particular place.
Fantastic. How long did it take you to write it?
Forever. Um, I mean, there's really two answers to that question. One of which is really embarrassing. So I actually wrote the very first scene, which is not all that changed from the one that's there, in 2001. So that long ago. But to say that it took 18 years, because I finished it in 2019, is really kind of misleading. Because what happened was I wrote that, didn't know what to do with it, put it aside. Years pass. I go, oh yeah. And so out of, whatever it was, like 18 years, I'd say like 3 or 4 of those years were time I was actually working on it. It just, it was one of those books. I'm actually going to write an essay about this. It's one of those books that I I had the idea 20 years ago, 18 years ago, and didn't have the writing chops to write it until just a few years ago. That's what happened. I mean, I just kept running up against my own inadequacy as a writer, and then having to sort of step back, learn a bit more, and learn how to do it.
So looking back on that, do you think that that was a real inadequacy or just your own emotions at play?
Yeah, both.
Both.
I mean, yeah, I'm as neurotic as the next guy, but no,
Not as neurotic as I
really,
am. Okay.
yeah, no, I remember that, Greg, Gary, I do remember that. Uh, no, I think it partially neurosis, but no, I honestly think I didn't know how to tell a story. I've always, my background is news, right? I'm a newspaper reporter, so I could always write prose that was readable. That was never a problem. The problem was learning how to tell a story that would keep people interested for 300 pages. I wrote a lot of books, right? Like everybody else, that will never see the light of day. They're not any good. And so I had to like figure it out. And for whatever reason, I consider myself a relatively intelligent guy, and fairly practical, but it just took me a super long time to figure out how to do it in a way that would produce a book that people would want to read.
And then life got in the way, right? Like
And then
family.
life gets in the way. Yeah, I'm the primary caregiver for my son. I work for a living. Yeah, life does get in the way. But yeah, no, it was mostly me figuring out how to tell a story that would really hold people for 300 pages, which is hard.
Yeah. How long did it take you to find a publisher?
That was another, again, there's two stories there. One was I tried to find an agent for it and came just painfully close a bunch of times with a bunch of different agents. I used to joke it was the most beloved novel, unpublished novel in America. But it just, it wasn't commercial enough, is what it came down to. The demographics are wrong. It's a love story told by a guy who maybe he's not the nicest guy on the planet, and would women read it? It just was this whole business conversation that I was having. And so then I decided to just do it on my own, and that was really quick. I went with, I started sending it out to independent publishers, and that happened in 3 months. So that was clearly where it was supposed to go. I just was barking up the wrong tree for a while.
Well, it sounds to me like I'm definitely the audience for it because I read literary fiction just like that.
Right.
So thank you. I hope I'm not the only one. I assume I'm not the only one, but there is a readership for it.
Yeah.
What are some of your book launch plans? Like, what do you think?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm
hire a publicist?
yeah, I did actually hire a publicist. And so I'm working with a publicist. In fact, I'm having one of our sort of weekly check-in meetings tomorrow. I'm doing a small book tour. If you're on the West Coast in Seattle, the Bay Area, or Los Angeles, go to my website and you'll see the dates, and I hope I'd see you there. That'd be fabulous. So I'm doing that.
Yourself, or did your publicist help you with those? The signing.
Both. I mean, for those of you who are thinking about setting up book tours, so I'm an unknown, right? I'm a nobody. So it's hard for me to book a bookstore, right? They don't know me, and they don't know that my book is going to attract people, even if I'm able to argue, hey, I know people there, blah, blah, blah. So what I've done in a number of cases is partner with a more senior writer who's a friend, who is going to introduce me and vouch for me and do an in conversation with. I'm doing that in several places. That seems to calm people's nerves and gets me invited. So I did that, and then yeah, my publicist does have some connections and was able to sort of pull some strings for me in other places. And then, I also write for like my intro. So I'm going to be doing a lot of writing, essays and, just making noise wherever I possibly can, and trying to get, we're really focusing on the Bay Area and on California, because it's very focused there, and I'm trying to get some press and get on radio and that kind of stuff, and get reviews. I got a great review, and this
Publishers Weekly, right?
yeah, Publishers Weekly gave me a really, really nice review, and that's huge. That really has opened doors. Now bookstores who wouldn't have heard of me now are like, okay, well, all right, we better stock this book. So yeah, that was a big deal. That was a big get.
So you've also covered the book industry in magazines, and you've served as an editor for Poets and Writers. You've contributed articles. What is the best piece of advice for a novelist who is looking to complete that first work? What is the, if you have one thing to share, either on the business side or on the creative side, what might it be?
Yeah.
And don't say don't do it.
Don't chase trends. I mean, and I hear this from a lot of agents and publishers too. Don't chase trends. There's a practical reason for it, which is the books take so long to write that by the time you're done writing it, the trend is over. So like, a few years ago, if you're gonna write about vampires, the vampire thing is done by the time you finish the book, and are ready to sell the book. And then there's a more personal reason to write it, which is that I think that those books are ultimately false. And write the book that you want to write, that makes you, proud, and makes you want to, get up in the morning and work on it. I think people are over focused on the business side of it, and I know some of the details of how the business works. It's not that lucrative. It's not. There's a lot easier ways to make a living.
It's not
What's
lucrative
that?
at all.
No, it's not lucrative. There's way easier ways of making a living. It makes so much more sense to have a job that you sort of like, and write what you care about, than try to make it as a freelancer. It's just an insanely, I do it. I mean, I'm a freelancer. I can tell you, it doesn't pay. I'm lucky I have a teaching gig. So write what you love.
Yeah,
that's what I'd say. Don't chase trends. Write what you love.
So you've obviously also reviewed a lot of books over the years, and probably seen your share of debut fiction. What would you say is the biggest mistake that debut novelists make?
Yeah,
that they,
if I'm being honest, it's that they publish too soon.
Really?
Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot to be said for rejection. Because a lot of books that I read, the person has talent, but they don't know what they're doing, and
the language or the plot or just all of it,
whatever it is, right? I mean, it's a different thing each time, but they didn't go through that process that I was describing of for whatever reason they were able to get past the gatekeepers early on. And again, I'm just saying, there's something to be said for failure. It's so sort of demonized in our culture, like but this real value in it, right? The rushing yourself out there before you're ready, before you know what you're doing, is not necessarily the best thing. Learn your craft, figure out how to tell the story, figure out to tell the story that's your story, and make it like a book that just needs to be in the world. And then it will find its place. The stuff, I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience too, right? I mean, like the stuff that I wrote that was on my hard drive, it wouldn't have gotten that good review in Publishers Weekly. People like this book because it's it's like I learned how to do what all the ideas and everything were there. I just didn't know how to make them work on a page.
It's like anything
in a book.
It's a craft that you have to
Yeah.
learn and hone and polish, and it has to I don't even want to ask how many revisions you went through.
Yeah, like hundreds. Yeah.
Hundreds. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like endless, endless. And it's not even that, although that certainly was a lot of it. It's much more just like I'm noticing now that when I write a scene that doesn't work, that used to be like just like, what am I gonna do? Right? Like this is, and now it's much more, well, I'll just take this and I'll change that and I'll do this thing over here. And I'm much more able to kind of make it do what I want it to do because I understand how the thing works. It's a machinery.
Yes.
It's like understanding how a car works,
Right.
right? If your car breaks down, you look at it like, you know, if you're not a mechanic, you're like, I don't understand how this, I don't know what to do. If you understand how a car works, you just fix it, right? And I think that that's what all those years did. As I understand how stories work,
Yeah. And it's not just
how
paying,
scenes work, and how characters work, and all that.
it's not just paying dues. It's really learning how to do it right and being ready for it.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of deep understanding of like what a story is, and how a character arc needs to work. And that's what I'm saying. Like, when I started writing this book, I really didn't know how to make the guy get to where I wanted him to get to. I just had no clue. I just sort of wrote, you know. And it's a craft. It's a thing that you learn how to do. Just like writing, those articles that I write for Poets and Writers is a craft. Like I know how a Poets and Writers article feature piece works. I know how many people I need to interview. I know what I need to. I know what quotes I need to get. And if I don't get them, I know I need to go back to the well and get some more. I know what I'm doing. Same thing with teaching a class. I know what I'm doing. I know how I got to get this thing across. This is something with writing books.